Welcome to the confusing episode. This is not Emissary, which is the launch of Deep Space Nine. This is The Emissary from late Season 2 of TNG. But you could probably tell that by the fact that, well, this is the TNG set, and Season 2 because of the presence of Dr. Pulaski.
I believe the wiser course of action here is to bend.
You mean fold, Data?
That is correct. Fold. To bend, to make compact, or to capitulate.
Yes, because Data never corrects an incorrectly applied term, ever. Worf raises 50 quatlus, or whatever they're using. Pulaski does the same, and Worf goes in with another 50, finishing it up with a full house. Very nice. Now he can afford to buy a Klingon didgeridoo. Come on, now that I mentioned it, you can't not see Worf sitting in his quarters with a didgeridoo, right? Just cheeks swollen like a chipmunk with a mouthful of nuts, 12 people outside his door in their pajamas, drawing straws to decide who has to go in and tell him to stop. They're called away by an emergency signal telling them that they need to go to a set of coordinates, but Starfleet's being cryptic about the mission. They're heading to the Barada system, where there's a bunch of Federation colonies, and they soon get a message from Starfleet Command directly to say this is an extremely important mission, and of course we will not tell you what it's about. So they have to go there to the rendezvous to meet with an envoy that's going to help handle a delicate situation.
Apparently there were no starships available on Starbase 153. The envoy is aboard a Class 8 probe.
Class 8 probe is just over 2 meters long.
Yeah, that's about the level of air travel that I can afford, too. So it's going after the probe for a while. You can tell that this is a pre-Season 3 episode because a great deal of effort is put into something that isn't necessary for the plot. Now, that's just an observation, it's not a judgment. The fact that the envoy came in a probe, all the technical things about recovering the probe, none of this is going to matter. So it exists for no other sake but its own. That's something you typically wouldn't see related to technical matters in the later seasons, but it calls to mind things like the manual linking up with the saucer section from Encounter at Farpoint, attempts to draw drama from the technical procedures. Whether or not this works is left up to the eye of the beholder. The gist is they cross paths with the probe, grab it with a tractor beam, and beam it on board, then crack that puppy open. The life support covers the envoy's face, allowing us a bit of a drawn-out time before we finally reveal that the envoy is Kalar, who is a half-Klingon, half-human. Cross-class. Soon, she gets to meet the crew.
Aren't you going to greet me?
I have nothing to say to you.
Now I know he does say that to everyone, but it seemed like it had a deeper meaning behind it. After the commercial break, she explains why they're out here. A Klingon ship with a cryogenically frozen crew is showing up, which wouldn't be an issue except this ship has been traveling so long. This was back during the war with the Federation. And you know how it goes. When you've been traveling for 75 years, it just kind of seems a shame to not blow something up once you finally arrived. There's a Klingon ship on the way to try to get them to not start slaughtering people, but they're going to be 2 days behind the Enterprise. If the crew wakes up before the Klingons arrive, it's going to be a bloodbath. And I don't mean it the way that the Klingons stick blood in front of everything. You'd think the Klingons were some 90s Rob Liefeld fans the way they do that. Kalar explains that any attempt at diplomacy is going to fail. These Klingons are killers who will not be persuaded by the Federation and will only be stopped from killing others if they're killed first. Picard is not really a fan of killing people, though, so he asks for other options and tells Worf to help Kalar to find them, but he would rather if Riker or Data could do that instead.
Are there any personal reasons that you don't want the assignment?
Yes.
Any professional reasons?
No.
Okay, so it's a personal reason. How many words does it have? Is it a film, a book, a TV show? Kalar talks with Troy about what it's like to be half one species and half of another, leading to the trapped between cultures thing. This shows a stark contrast between the two characters. Troy sees herself as embodying the best of her two species, Kalar their worst. Because Mr. Spock was the original alien hybrid in Star Trek, The concept of the two halves is an integral part of the lore of the show. Consequently, she sees herself in terms of a human half and a Klingon half, and rejects her Klingon half to Troy, fearing it and saying that she doesn't like it. This remains a sore spot between her and Worf, who, like her, is trapped between two cultures. He pines for a Klingon ideal that does not exist, yet follows the ways of Starfleet. But the source of the problem is that he embraces the Klingon way, and she utterly rejects the Klingon way, and consequently there's more tension between them than a Apocalypse G-string on Taco Tuesday. We pick up that something significant happened between them 6 years ago.
As I see it, we have some unfinished business.
Yeah, never collected the deposit on that paddle boat they rented. So they fight, then they fight, then they fight, then they fight, except this time it's just a lot of arguing.
Whatever happened to that wonderful Klingon fatalism of yours?
My experiences aboard this ship have taught me most problems have more than one solution.
Like quadratic equations, for one. After a fierce argument, she says this whole thing's a waste of time. Plan annihilation is going to be the only option now, and storms out. She stomps through the ship like someone took her lunch for the 5th day in a row, and finally... Great, now you gotta call table repair. Oh, wow, that was fast.
Come! You're upset.
Deanna Troi, proof that you can be a lieutenant commander and still be a Captain Obvious. She suggests the calisthenics program to work out some of the aggression, so Kalar chooses to use Worf since we'd seen it earlier in the season, so we already got the set built. Meanwhile, Worf storms onto the bridge and wants to do a weapons check despite one having been just finished. You eat the one that you have before making more, young man.
I'm concerned that you're working yourself too hard.
Sir, considering the unknown elements we are about to face,
Lieutenant, I order you to relax.
I am relaxed.
Come on, if your face were any more tense, it'd smooth out your forehead. Worf goes to do his calisthenics to unwind, only to discover that somebody's running the program. So after she gets into a fight with Skeletor, he shows up to indicate he's quite bemused by this. Halfway through, and we are at the point when they're fighting alongside each other rather than with each other, so there's been improvement. I've seen monsters battling miniature reproductions of Tokyo that are more convincing than these. At least TOS had the excuse of being 20 years earlier. So with the fight done, it's time for the Klingon softcore to begin. And then when they're done with whatever it is they actually do, they talk about the past, until Worf decides to make the declaration about their marriage.
Wait. You can't mean...
We are mated,
Yes, I know. I was there. But...
and now we must solemnize our union
Ooh.
with the oath.
Oh. Well, Kalar isn't really feeling in the mood for any oath-taking today. She has a headache. Meanwhile, on the bridge...
Short and long-range sensor scans negative, Captain.
Yeah, if you want to feel old, that's Diedrich Baber of Drew Carey Show, Office Space, Veep, Space Force, etc. Right now, he is barely old enough to buy beer. No joke, I looked it up. Oh, that's just... It's a wonder anyone from this show is even still alive if this is the walk-on role that we get this week. Anyway, Kalar is back to working on the Klingon project, and Worf shows up with Data, seemingly just to annoy her. But she's finally got a plan. Show up before the Klingons wake up and then keep them asleep. That buys time for the Klingon ship to get here. But if not, they're going to have no choice. The Klingons will fight a Federation ship, even if their mission was to go look for gaseous anomalies, and they didn't spend 75 years in stasis to go looking for space gas. Disabling the ship would achieve nothing because the Klingons would just self-destruct it in order to avoid the dishonor of capture. And asking them why they would even spend 75 years frozen to show up here and attack anyone would just point out the obvious plot hole in the script. So they find the Klingons, but after taking just one pot shot at them, they then cloak and then fly off. Not that the cloak is doing them much good. A cloak that old is pretty easy to defeat using modern tech. They need to get the newer ones with the USB attachment and the lightning cables. Worf has worked out a plan that might get the Klingons to stand down, by making it look like the Enterprise is under the command of himself and Kalar, essentially to imply that there is some massive development with the Klingons taking over the Federation that they know nothing about. Now, the captain is skeptical of this, but eventually, when he can see that Worf is ready to fire on him, he agrees to stand down. I mean, it takes quite a bit of Klingon posturing for Worf to pull it off, but in the end he does. He's good at that kind of a thing. He's got the head for it. And of course...
How would you like command?
Comfortable chair.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but it must be rough for Worf to have to stand in front of that thing all day, hunched over. He's probably got to have some kind of a back issue by now. Kalar is sent over to handle getting the Klingons up to speed while they wait for the other ship to arrive. She and Worf get a final heart-to-heart where she admits she almost took the oath and only blew up at him because she was scared that she almost did. I mean, you've seen their mating rituals. Do you think that would make somebody nervous? It would make me nervous. So, touching goodbye and the end. The post-episode follow-up. Annoying character goes to the Monsters in the Calisthenics program. Woof. They needed to put some kind of a budget towards that. Final score for The Emissary is 5 out of 10. Typical TNG. This episode is like watching a waltz, as the same thing gets repeated until finally the Klingons wake up so that something can happen. I have to tell you, this is honestly the hardest episode I've had to do in years. This is so weird. It's a fine episode to watch. I sat down and watched it and just breezed right through it. It's fine. Then I sat down to do this show for it. Oh my God, it was so fucking tedious. It's I don't know. I can't explain it to you. I don't know how to even put into words. Watching it, fine. Trying to examine it, it's like pulling fucking teeth. I don't get it. I'd sit here and say, okay, well, how long has it been since I last... 1 minute and 45 seconds? Jesus Christ, it's going to take me all month. I can't even tell you. I can't even analyze the analysis of it. This episode is so bizarre in this aspect. I mean, I gotta tell you, again, just watching it is fine. The performances are okay. You get to see a bit of a Klingon, which is fine. I can't knock the episode. That's why I give it a 5. It's just that they had the audacity to make this episode hard for me to do my job. Well, we'll see how things go better next week with Reunion.
All hail